Good evening, good morning, good night, whatever the case may be. It's time for World History. Yeah, with me, your favorite, most intelligent, well renowned history expert that the world has ever seen. I'm Coach Hughes. Welcome in to another fun filled, exciting lecture, hopefully, about history. And here lately, we've been kind of consumed with world religions so far. In our discussions, we have talked about Judaism, we've talked about Christianity, and today we shift gears yet again and we talk about the religion of Islam. And like many other religions, Islam is kind of a touchy subject, depending on who believes it, who doesn't believe it, and so forth. But I just want to remind you all out there in virtual world that we are looking at religion through historical lenses and how it played a somewhat vital role in the way that our culture and society has developed over the many centuries that we've been here. So, without any further ado, let's jump into the topic of Islam. Now, let's talk about some background of the religion of Islam. Now, much of the Arabian Peninsula, you can see here on the map, is desert. It's isolated somewhat. It's hot during the day, very cold at night, your typical desert setting. Although there are mountains in the southwest, right there on the Saudi Arabian Peninsula, uh, it was mostly desert all across this northeastern African peninsula that we're looking at. Now, one thing that you need to know about are, and it's in the vocabulary, oases. Oases are green areas that are actually fed by an underground water source. When I was growing up, there was a lot of cartoon debate and what an oasis was. Uh, Usually, the cartoons that I watched on Saturday mornings, they kind of made Oasis to be out as your typical mirage where you were so dehydrated, so you're so thirsty that you kind of imagined these places to exist. But oases actually do exist in these desert climates. And they are, like they said, they're green areas, kind of just pop up here and there. And they're definitely fed by an underground water source. Now, early Arabs formed tribes that were headed by sheik. And this was typical for any tribe or any situation throughout world history that someone takes the lead. Maybe it's a natural born leader. Maybe there is a line of succession, but someone kind of comes into power over time. And in this case, for early Arabs, that did form tribes out in these areas. They were headed, like I said, by a sheik. The Bedouins were desert herders who traveled from place to place, or I should say, oasis to water their animals, to water themselves. Many Arabs lived in villages near oasis, and if you think about it, that was quite necessary. Really, any place in world history. We go back to Rome, founded on the Tiber River. We go back to Mesopotamia, the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. If you wanted to set up a village, if you wanted to set up a house, the first thing that you had to have was a water source. And it's no different for people living in this area. You had to be near a water source or you simply would not survive. You had to have water, your animals had to have water, and so forth. So the Bedouins, if they wanted to be these desert herders, kind of like nomads, you move from place to place in search for food, but they moved from place to place really for search for water in these oases that were located throughout this area. Now, merchants who transported goods across the deserts, they had to form caravans. They had to form these caravans in order to protect themselves from Bedouin attacks, possibly other attacks. Caravans are simply put a group of animals or people, in most cases people, that are traveling from place to place, who are merchants that transport these goods from place to place with all sorts of things. Um, Larger numbers. It's all about protection. It's all about safety in numbers. When we went from, in the Stone Age, when we went from the Mesolithic to the Neolithic time periods, and we started farming, and we were no longer nomads, when we set up houses, we usually set up in villages because we felt safer in numbers. And it's really no difference in this situation when merchants traveled across the deserts, that they traveled in groups, and it was really for a protective state, an issue to be safe while transporting these goods from place to place. Now, as you can imagine, trade grew and merchants founded towns along these trade routes that these caravans actually created. Mecca, might want to put a circle on E. Mecca was, in fact, the largest and wealthiest trade center and is an important religious site visited by pilgrims. We'll get into that just a little bit later. But it's the same principle today. If you're going to be on a trade route going from one city to another, these cities develop as a place that you could rest, meet other traders, travel in different groups or with your groups, and trade among this. And these cities really became wealthy off these trade routes. People would stop, they would eat, they would have to pay taxes there, housing, lodging, all of these things that you can imagine really invested in these cities that would pop along, or pop up, I should say, along these vital trading routes. Now, the new religion that forms, background on this: a man named Muhammad brought a new religion to the Arabian Peninsula there. Much of what we know about him comes from religious writing, as do a lot of our history comes from different parts of historical writings. Muhammad, we know, was born in the city of Mecca, probably around roughly 570. As a child, he traveled with his uncle's caravans because that's, like we've described, what people did in this area. And as an adult, Muhammad even managed a caravan business in order to protect people and the things that they traded. Now, Muhammad became upset that rich people did not help the poor. And that's been a real factor throughout the history and our discussions that we have talked about all the way back, really from the beginning. There is no real middle class in the ancient world. It was really the haves and have-nots. And Muhammad often went to a cave to meditate, to think, to relax on this problem that, quite simply, the rich didn't bother to help the poor. Maybe he thought that the rich were stuck up individuals. Maybe he was poor. Maybe he needed help. Maybe he saw this out of his business, that the rich never really intended to help the poor in any given situation. Now, according to Islamic belief, when Muhammad was 40, an angel spoke to him. And these messages formed the basis of the religion that today is known as Islam. All of these things were written in the Quran, which is the holy book of Islam. That would be the equivalent of the Christian Bible in Christianity. Now, a follower of Islam is called a Muslim, kind of in the same way that a follower of Christianity is called a Christian. Now, Muhammad taught that there was only one God, Allah, And this was really the case in the three big religions: Judaism, Christianity, and now Islam, the belief that there is just one God. Now, the belief in one God was a new idea for many right there where he was teaching this new idea on the Arabian Peninsula. Before this time, Arabs prayed to many gods at many different shrines, and that had been the case throughout history, whether it was the Greeks and Greek mythology or the Romans and Roman mythology. Now, the most important shrine was, in fact, located there in Mecca, where Muhammad was born. In the middle of Mecca is the Kaaba, a low square building. You can see it in the picture here, surrounded by statues of gods and goddesses. Now, inside is a large stone that Arabs believe came from heaven. Now, I know the picture does not do it justice there, but Muslims actually make a pilgrimage, and we'll talk about this when we talk more about the five pillars of Islam. But all the white surrounding that statue, that shrine there, is actually people, and they're worshiping toward this stone that they believe came from the heavens. Now, many people travel to Mecca every year on what we call a pilgrimage. Muhammad also taught that the rich should give money to the poor. This was one of the things that he meditated quite heavily on in the cave there, as we stated earlier. But rich merchants in Mecca, they rejected the idea. They did not want to have to give their wealth up. They viewed it as theirs, and they shouldn't have to. Slowly, though, Muhammad's message began to have some infiltration. Started to kind of seek into the people's minds there, started to influence them. The rulers of Mecca, although they felt threatened by him, kind of in the same sense we talked about how the Roman government didn't care who people worshiped during the Roman Empire, but if they felt like they were being threatened, that's when they went all out to kind of stop that. And you saw that with Christianity in the Roman Empire, to where at one point near the beginning of the founding of Christianity, the Romans started to persecute or mistreat Christians. It's kind of the same mentality here as what we're seeing by the government officials there in Mecca. Muhammad ended up leaving Mecca and went to Medina. His house there became the first mosque, or a building for Muslim prayer, kind of like churches for Christians or synagogues for people of Jewish faith. After years of conflict, the people in Mecca finally gave in and, for the most part, accepted Islam. That's just a quick introduction of the story of Islam. We've got about 3 more parts, 3 more lectures after this. So we will end there today, and we will definitely pick up. And the next topic we'll kind of focus in on is what people of the Islamic faith worship and what they do. And we'll definitely talk about the 5 pillars of Islam. Until next time, this is Coach Hughes. Take care.